talked a lot about like what we do here and, you know, what is and how we're adjusting and changing and trying to make your guys' department better. But talking a little bit specifically what occurred with George Floyd and the incident that occurred at Minneapolis, you know, what sort of de-escalation and diversity awareness or unbiased training, trainings, I should say, do members of the department currently participate in? And then obviously I'm assuming, you know, what my next question will be is, you know, what else is out there? And
quite honestly, with what's happened recently, there's a lot of vendors selling de-escalation, implicit bias training. But really, it's part of our culture. It starts at the police academy, and it hasn't always been like that, I'm sure. But it starts in the academy. I've been to fair and impartial policing at the executive level through the Michigan Association of Chiefs of Police and Michigan Commission on Law Enforcement Standards. So it's at every level from the ground up. We typically, in being public safety, we work 12-hour shifts. Scheduling in person can be difficult. We do in-person training, but we also do a lot of online training. We have a couple different platforms we use. We have assignments. We do a lot of, and we have a program or a platform called Target Solutions. So that is the bulk of our training we put out through there. Also, when we put out new policies, we test our officers on some of the new policies, especially the important ones. I'm hoping to do more in-person training. You know, with the pandemic, a lot of the in-person training is not. And I've got some personal friends that do that training that are also work for our licensing agency. So I'd like to bring him in also. But to answer your question is we do a lot of training through. And you don't want to do training just to do training. You want it to be valid. So we also have to fact check, make sure it's valid, and make sure it fits with our best practices. So I've contacted the Michigan Commission on Law Enforcement Standards. I'd like to get the fair and impartial policing to all of our officers. It was through a grant a couple of years ago. It's right when I got here, and I had already been pre-registered for my formal department, so I was the only one in the entire department that was able to go. And there's no funding for that right now. So I've asked if we can do that again, because I think it's very, very pertinent now, obviously, and needed. So we're looking at every option we have. You know, we started a couple other platforms here recently that'll also give us some more options for doing the training. And obviously, where you're going next is I would like to do some more in-person training. Bigger department where I came from, and having, like I said, the diverse community, we would have a Sikh temple come in and do a couple-hour presentation on their culture. We'd have a Muslim temple come in and do a presentation. So that applied because we had those locations in the city. So we need to be a little more general here. Most of the diversity we'll deal with, well, both our residents, businesses, and also people traveling through the city. So whatever we can do, and a lot of it's also just getting our officers to understand other points of view, which I think we do a really good job. But I really, really hammer that because you know, like I said, I grew up in Berkley and Huntington Woods. I've lived within a couple of miles my entire life. I don't have any experiences outside this area. Other than working for different cities. So we really have to be cognizant of other people's perceptions also.
Yeah, no, and it's good to know that you guys continue that and are continuing that. You know, specific to, you know, the Black Lives Matter movement and everything that's occurring now, you know, are there any new training measures planned to combat any racial or inequity and injustice within the department specifically? You know, if you could talk about anything that you guys are doing on that front to address, you know, if you were already addressing it, you know, what are you doing now? And then, you know, if there are plans to maybe increase or, you know, re-look at, you know, everything given the nature of what's happening.
Sure. Well, we're going to continue to train, and like I said, there's a lot more training that's becoming available. I think some are important to be in person. I think, we're able to meet here with video. I'm not a big fan of conversing through email because I don't think it doesn't do a very good job in people's feelings and passion. So there are some options. A lot of what we do are video based, so that you can get feedback. So my goal would be to bring in people, and like I said, we have some options there. But our big thing is, and we met with all of the supervisors in the department, all the sergeants and lieutenants, myself. We met for 2 entire days, going over some policies. But this is one of the things we talked about was really we have to understand people's perspective. It's just so important. We can't think that just from our point of view. We have to look at other points of views. And depending upon the officer's life experiences, we have a lot of people here that were in the military. I think that helps because, they've dealt with a lot of different people. But if you grew up in Berkeley and you in the facility department you work for, you may not have the experiences that people in other departments or other areas deal with. So that's really important. So our plan is to keep moving forward. And again, we have to balance it with the fire and the EMS also. Matter of fact, we have, I think, 3 or 4 officers in pump operator training today and tomorrow on the fire side. So, typically a week doesn't go by where we don't have somebody in training. Excuse me.
Yeah, no, well, and you kind of touched on a crucial point that I think is unique to us regarding the fact that you guys are public safety. I would imagine that not only from a police officer standpoint, but as firefighters, paramedics, EMTs, there's there's training that goes along with that in terms of going on a med run and dealing with somebody that is of a different color, different gender, or coming from a different experience as well.
Exactly, and I think where we're located, with Southfield to the west and Oak Park to the south, we do have it's not like we don't deal with diversity, because we do.
Right.
Maybe I think that goes without saying, but I want to stress that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that is part of our training. That's part of our police training, part of our fire training, and part of our medical first responding training too. And the big thing is communication. I think communication is huge. That's where the bulk of the issues I've seen over my career come up, is when people just aren't communicating. So again, I'm a firm believer in trying to do that before, you build up that communication, right. being as transparent as we can, and we can't violate people's privacy. We can't just go out there and type whatever we want into social media. We have to make sure the information is valid. We can't violate people's privacy. There's HIPAA laws. There's I don't want to embarrass anyone. Quite honestly, mm-hmm. There's been things that have been out there that were out and out wrong, and we don't want to embarrass anyone. So it's difficult. We want to be as transparent as we can, but we also don't want to invade anybody's privacy also.
Certainly, and that's understandable. Kind of circling back to, I think is a good point, when you talked about, new officers coming in, where they came from, those influencing how they are as an officer. How do you guys include de-escalation or any type of diversity awareness training within the hiring process? You touched on a good point that, some of these officers, not just from Berkeley, but other areas that may be demographically similar to Berkeley, having those different experiences, not just them, but, the vice versa approach when it comes to them, entering law enforcement or any type of public safety enforcement.
Sure. Well, it's kind of a long process, and I guess I'll probably the best way to start out too is it's hard to get people to do this job. It's right now, it's hard to hire police officers. It's hard to hire firefighters. It's hard to hire paramedics. It's hard to hire EMTs. The pool is very thin right now. I know when I applied, 1,200 people tested. Now, if we get 10 applications, that's pretty good for a department our size here. So it's difficult. So we're looking for the best people for the job. We've been lucky where we've hired some ex-military people here recently. Again, I think that helps, but there's there's 2 different interview boards that are done here initially. We have a board that's done, and we include public safety officers in that board, where my former employee it was all lieutenants and above. Here, we try to, because that's who know this job better than anybody. So we have 2 different interviews. We also have an extensive background where we talk to everybody. It takes weeks to do our backgrounds. I do a final interview before we decide whether to do a conditional offer. I think one of the biggest things is a psychological evaluation, which is it's required by our licensing agency to be a police officer in Michigan. You have to be licensed by MCOLs, and that's required. But we go even beyond that to do a full-blown psychological evaluation. So they're looking for that there also. So it's kind of a well-rounded, and then also we really have to just watch people. We have to supervise our people all the time, but particularly when they're new, to make sure they're following our philosophy and doing what's right. And I'm really a strong believer in treating people impartially and treating everybody with respect and dignity. And I lead by example there. I mean, my time over my career, I've arrested people for homicide. I've investigated quadruple homicides. But everybody I've ever dealt with, I've really done my best to treat with dignity and respect, even if what they did was horrendous. Because I think, we're all human beings. I'm not any better than anybody else. We're all the same as far as I'm concerned. So we have to treat each other like that.
No, I think that's good to hear. And I know those watching will appreciate that as well. You kind of touched on a point, and I just kind of want to touch on it just slightly. We don't have to spend too much time on it, but you keep mentioning that like having military experience is sometimes more valuable. Can you kind of touch on that a little bit more and what you mean in regards to military
Sure.
experience? The only reason I bring it up is just because there is some disconnect or discourse with that.
Sure.
Do you know where I'm going from?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
And what I mean is that's a diverse work environment. The military is very diverse. That's where I'm going with that. And we do have several officers that have been deployed. So, I mean, that's not a negative in my mind either, because I think it gets you used to stressful situations. But where I'm going with that is you have to work with other people regardless of race, sex, anything. So that's a diverse working environment. I like people that have worked in diverse working environments and diverse situations because it's not something new to them. And thanks for bringing that up. That needed some clarification.
No, I appreciate it. That's why I wanted to ask, because as we've discussed even between our talks and everything like that, experiences are different, understandings of experiences are different. So I just wanted to touch on that.